Welcome to the art story of my NASA dream story. So I had this dream. It just instead of like I don't know. I think maybe it was 11 or 10, but I had the dream. I just woke up and I was just like remembering all these very tiny little details, and so I just decided, yeah, I'm gonna write it all down. So I wrote it down on a sheet of paper, actually sheets of paper, because there was like I think 6 front and back on each side. So essentially, I don't know, 12 maybe. Maybe it was like 4 and 8, but yeah. So there was a lot. However much is there. Yeah. Okay, so I started typing it because I wanted to transfer from the notebook paper to the computer. So thus I got all my papers, and then I got them in a little order, and I just started going and going. I mean, we have letters for days. I kind of wish I could zoom out of this, yes. But anywho, so we're bringing the laptop closer, and I'm just like, you can kind of see how I scan the papers, and then what I do is I just like type them. I find my placement. I make a little mark, and then if I just like start typing, and just like go, and I go pretty fast. But yeah,
You can't see it right now, but like my head, it's just like it's only staring at the paper right now. My hands they're just moving on their own. It's like the brain going directly to the fingers, but like not attached to the eyeballs.
so let's just continue here. Patience while I relocate my spot once more. So you see how I just scribble out every little bit. I just scribble out when I'm done with the paragraph. Ooh, what lies there before my eyes for me to look away? We do not know. I shake my head. No, 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 no. Then I continue writing. My fingers are tapping my head. Now it looks like I have these headphones on. Yes, I'm actually bobbing to some beats. Oh, da 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 da. Perhaps an Irish tune. I don't know. I have no idea what I was listening to. But anywho, yeah. So it's music like the hand gesture, but of exercise. Ooh. Okay, so we have like my little headphones are on my head, and I'm just typing away. You know, it's about me. I dreamt it. So my NASA dream story is about this. It's me. I'm invited on a trip into space. Well, not really into space. It's more like almost up outside the atmosphere, but it's on a rocket ship. Ho ho. So that's how I finished my papers, by the way. Yeah. It just the little lines they get scribbled away. Ho ho, because I finished them. Yeah, and I write on every single line. It's the tiny ruled one, and I rip it off, and I say that's a paper I can use again. So yeah, this is the all the writing that I got down from it. So that's pretty good. A lot of typing there. Yeah. I don't like how the autocorrect kind of give me my red lines, but yeah, those are all my papers. Ooh, and there's the autocorrect. Oh boy, I just kind of went through mostly, just like tapping it real fast. But I mean, okay, so do I really accept them though if I'm just like auto typing them? Oh, the caveman. We need connection. Oh, I reconnected. Okay, so now we have the computer mouse. I'm tapping, just tapping every single little correction. Yeah, it's working. We're doing fine. Okay. As I tappity tap, it's almost like I have a little clicky. I'm a mouse clicky on my finger. Now I'm thinking, I'm pondering. What am I pondering? I have no idea, but blinks, they can happen really fast. You don't really know. Ooh, I'm staring, yes, because autocorrect is telling me that this is not a word. Well, it is beneath. I don't know exactly what I was writing. And so we had some names. So like we had Cleo, Austin, I think there was yeah. It was like a hyper intelligent boy. He had a really funky name. I forgot it. But yeah, it'll be in the story coming up. Ooh. And we're out of time. But now it's time.
Ooh. Hello. Today we have a laptop right here, and I have a giant story. We know the story, the NASA dream story. Let's go ahead and just read it all over and figure out exactly why I dreamed such a dream that should not be dreamt, because I typed it all out. It was a very complex process, as you could see from before. Whee! It was very complex. It was probably the most complex dream I've ever dreamt. Yeah, let's get right on to it. Ooh, NASA dream. I went to NASA headquarters because I had a ticket for a trip around the world in a rocket. There were also 5 other lucky people who had this opportunity. Since this ride was around the world, we were not actually going to leave the Earth's atmosphere. We would stop at places around the world though. On my way to the flight, I stopped at the bathroom to take a dump. Almost inside the restroom, I bumped into one of the people who would be going to the rocket with me. I could tell because of the clip-on tag she was wearing, which showed the NASA rocket VIP symbol. Even though the bump was not that hard, the girl got very angry and marched away toward a different bathroom. That was strange, but as I made my way into the restroom, I realized that it was flooded. The girl must have superpowers that controlled water, and when she got angry, she purposely flooded the bathroom to get revenge on me for accidentally bumping into her. How rude. What an assumption this was. Because why superpowers? I don't know. But anywho, I have no idea why I thought that, but yeah. Okay, even so, I really had to pee, and I decided to go anyway. Yeah, in the flooded bathroom. After I finished, I realized that I only had 2 minutes to board the rocket. If I didn't make it there in time, I would not be able to have the experience of a lifetime. Arr. I quickly ran all the way over to the other side of the NASA headquarters, just as the last traveler was boarding. In my sprint, however, I accidentally slipped on some wet part of the floor and crashed right into a boy. Second crash of today. What luck. Luckily, the boy didn't get mad, unlike that girl from before, and actually helped me get to my feet. He then asked if I was okay, and I replied, I'm gonna ride a rocket. Of course I'm okay. Just then, a security guard broke into our conversation and asked us both if we were VIP riders for the upcoming rocket launch around the globe. I replied, yes, and showed him my badge. Whoosh. The man then replied to shove us into the rocket's entrance. Talk about some unnecessary rushing. Okay. Anywho, once I boarded the rocket, I spotted a load of cool tech gadgets hung along the walls and scattered along the tables in front of me. Along the tables. Period. In front of me, I saw that there were, in total, 6 seats. Each seat was special because it contained a name tag displaying the name of the passenger who was assigned that seat. My name tag was placed in the second row on the left-hand side. Directly in front of my seat was a seat containing a chubby boy who was constantly explaining to everyone riding that his name was Fat Boy. And because he always wanted to live up to his name, he demanded that everyone call him Fat. Yeah, I don't know how my mind thought of that, but great. Behind my seat was where the boy I accidentally bumped into was seated. I realized now that I could see this boy better. He looked a lot like Jack Frost from The Rise of the Guardians and was wearing some superhero suit that someone like Captain America would wear. What? When I glanced at his name tag, I saw that his name was Austin. I smiled and waved at him. Sitting across from him was the girl I bumped into in the bathroom. She looked cool. Too cool. Dark purple hair and several obnoxious face piercings. I wonder just how old she is. After all, at the time I was writing this, I was like, I don't know, 13? I don't know. It was like young, but can't think of a child doing that, but maybe kids nowadays do those things. Okay. When you lose your place. Anywho, just across from me was a more or less arguably intelligent looking boy. He had reading glasses on, probably to read that open book in his hands, and then maybe to continue reading that other giant stack of books piled beside his seat, a pile which most probably consisted of 13 4,000-page books. It goes on for miles. Lastly, in terms of seats to mention, there was an adult sitting just across from Fat Boy in the front row on the left. It was probably the spacecraft's driver since there was a steering wheel installed directly in front of his seat. Although the driver had the most windows, each passenger also had their own window, including myself, so we could marvel over the skyward view once we were high up enough. Okay, completely unexpected, Fat Boy yanked his head in my direction and spoke. Hey yo, yes, yo girl. His voice was raspy like a warthog who had just choked on some pebbles he had somehow attempted to swallow. He continued when he knew he had gotten my attention. Do you like donuts or cake better? I replied with neither, and stated that I would honestly prefer something else, like ice cream. Though quite a simple response on my end. This made the boy gasp so hard that he fell into a fitful of outrageous choking. Fat Boy, finally concluding his coughs, lifted an eyebrow while staring down my 2 eyeballs. Can't do it with my other eyeball. My eyebrow. Okay. And turned away, muttering some words I couldn't hear even if I had the ears of a dog. Not long later, liftoff began. I felt the vibrations as we took off and looked out the windows at the view of the landscape. Just then, the pilot spoke into the loudspeaker and announced that our itinerary was going to land us in a total of 3 places. 3. First off, Spain. Second, China. Lastly, Australia. Following that, the pilot introduced everyone on board and how each passenger was able to receive this epic ride. Fat Boy had won some donut eating contest for ages 15 to 17. The Smart Boy, who would later turn out to be quite annoying, was announced as Catwell. Catwell had earned his place in this ride by winning some minute reading contest. Hi. Catwell had earned his place in this ride by winning some minute reading contests. In this event, one would have a minute to read as much as possible, to read as much text as possible. Catwell ended up reading 30 pages in an 8-point size font to his victory. An accomplishment Catwell just kept on going on and on about. One of those people. Even the pilot demanded Catwell stop so many times, all without this braggy boy listening, that the driver threatened to push him off the plane if he didn't stop, which made Catwell stop. Next, the driver announced me had won first in a school essay contest over recycling. Yay! Essay which was forwarded to the state government and then eventually the national government. The essay had convinced Florida to discontinue using plastic bags and instead use paper reusable bags. Once the driver finished my general bio, I explained briefly to the others the key aspects I included in my essay. Everyone looked impressed, except Catwell, who kept on complaining why no one seemed as impressed with his accomplishments as they did mine. I assured him that we were all very impressed with his work. However, such my words of wisdom, I don't even know. However, such a mention, I don't know why I said that. Okay, I wrote that. However, such a mention caused the oblivious boy's face to light up once more, and he commenced his non-stop blabbering once again. Yay. This time, it was the only other girl beside myself on this ride who deliberately halted Catwell's chatter. She used her powers. These again? These powers? She has actually powers? Dumped a whole water bottle all over Catwell's head. Hey, you got my books all wet! Complained, but decided to stop talking. Good choice. Don't deal with girls with dark purple hair. Oh, dark kitty ears. Dark purple kitty ears. Hey. Okay. The girl with water powers was announced as Cleo. Cleo had won this rocket ride opportunity by helping save a town from an overflowing dam. The people of the town wanted to thank the girl. Extra space. Thank the girl and decided to put together a big donation in her honor that allowed her to be able to have this rocket ride. Good town. Good civilization. Okay. While the pilot so proudly announced all this, Cleo was just simply chilling in her chair, applying powder to her face. A makeup guru is. Lastly announced was the boy behind me, the one with his Captain America suit. His name was Austin, as the name tag confirmed, and we were told that he loves superheroes. Oh. To which the boy added that Captain America was his favorite. No wonder he was wearing that suit. Austin had won this ride by winning first place in a race car driving contest. Ooh. As I glanced around, I noticed that everyone looked around my age. It's not surprising since the ticket said that only 14 to 16-year-olds could ride. I turned 14 only 3 days ago and thus was on the edge of being allowed to ride. But luckily the manager stated that age is age and happily accepted to allow me a ticket on board. Okay. Anyway, after about an hour later, and after Fat Boy started demanding to be served 7 cheeseburgers, we arrived at our first destination, Spain. As soon as we arrived, under Fat Boy's comments and complaints, we all went as a group to eat lunch at a place called Casa de la Animal. Apparently this place was all about saving the animals of this planet, which was much to my liking, but absolutely despicable to Fat Boy. After all, that meant there would be no cheeseburgers there. There was, however, pan con tomate and sal verde, in spinacas con garzambos, crema de verduras, panada de verduras, and some, wow, I was gonna say it is It's in French, edu. And some churros ni nuresco musicia. So for these names, I don't even know what the foods are, but I just, in my mind, those were like things I was imagining. And I was like thinking the closest. I was like, because I knew the image in my mind, and I was like, how do I get that onto actual foods? So I was just like, okay, let's Google them. Let's Google foods in Spain or around that area, then see what looks the closest to what I was in my mind. Yes. Out of all these options, I had crema de verduras and the patella de verduras, which are absolutely delicious. A little harder to say than expected. Hot, 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 hot. I'm doing some hard work. Yes, it's time to reveal the Hello Kitty. Hydration. We return, we return, we return. Okay. Beautiful. Beautiful. Okay. And now, let's see, what were we doing? Well, they were absolutely delicious. Fat Boy, on the other hand, was so outraged with the limited healthy options that he demanded to yell at the manager. The manager, however, was out running a marathon and thus couldn't be spoken to. Because that's what managers do. They run marathons in the middle of the workday. Why not? Okay. Of course, Fat Boy wouldn't give up so easily. A new plan was forming within his brain, and the angry boy instead demanded to be directed toward the restaurant landline. He didn't tell them, however, that he was going to order 3 potato and sausage pizzas. I didn't know either. That is, until I saw Fat Boy hurry on over to the restaurant's front door to pick up his wondrous pizzas. Oh. Imagine someone doing that inside of a restaurant, like saying, we're going to the Subway, but oh, we're gonna have McDonald's deliver it to us here, and then we're gonna eat it in like the Subway, and then the Subway people are like, what doing with cheeseburgers in our sandwich place? So I was in so much shock that I immediately spit out a mouthful of lemonade, leaving the liquid to land all over Catwell's precious 4,000-page books. And yeah, he brought them with him. That's what he does. Catwell screamed in terror and rushed to the nearest restroom, the woman's restroom, to get napkins to dry off his books and himself. Commotion began to escalate. I'll briefly explain what happened. Cleo was calmly sitting in her corner of the table booth, bopping to some tunes on her smartwatch and clearly not wanting to be disturbed. Austin was occupied on his side of the table, somehow stacking what seemed to be over 1,000 superhero-themed playing cards into a giant castle. You know, like those like playing cards, you just like do, and you like another layer and you like tower them. And then you get like this beautiful castle. Oh. So the rocket driver, I assume, was still in the plane since he had stated that meanwhile us kids would get to explore for 4 hours in Spain. He wasn't allowed to spend any money and thus couldn't leave the rocket until the entire trip was over. Yeah, apparently that's a rule. Rather strange logic, but well, as for me, I was just staring mouth wide open at the scene occurring between Fat Boy, his pizza, and the waiters as they continuously attempted to force the pizza boxes away from the screaming Fat Boy. Yeah, imagine that also happened inside of a restaurant, probably with Karens. Luckily, I had finished my meal before this whole catastrophe had happened and handed the waiter $10 out of the $500 the rocket driver gave us for expenses. This was only my share of the meal, however. Before anything got any worse within that restaurant, I decided to head out and began looking at flyers for the National Archaeological Museum, which was less than 2 blocks away. Suddenly, Austin called my name from behind me and asked if he could tag along. I happily accepted. Before departing, I remembered the $400 I still had in my pocket and decided to split it with my fellow travelers. Now, I don't know how I got these costs. Like, I don't think it would be $400 left. Yeah, I don't know. Okay, we'll see. It's fine. If you want, you can do the calculations. But I do say everything here. Before departing, I remembered the $400 I still had in my pocket and decided to split it between my fellow travelers. However, I realized that Fat Boy had used $20 as a total to buy himself those pizzas. We even paid $30 for him at the restaurant so he could try an appetizer, lunch, and dessert. And all of which Fat Boy despised. You see, he tried them. He didn't like them. Meanwhile, Cantwell ordered both lunch and dessert, so we had to pay $20 for him. But Austin and I only got lunch, and we paid $15 for each of us. Jill got both lunch and dessert, so she was also $20. I split the remainder of our cash and gave everyone a full $76, including Fat Boy, because he probably would have yelled at me if I had given him any less. I then said my farewells to the rest of the group as Austin and I walked toward the museum. Admission ended being $25 for each of us, and at the front door, a strange clown and his little frog awaited to collect our payment. We explored the exhibits and saw many different types of historical statues, some more or less historic than others. At one point in our curious search, Austin mentioned that he liked one specific painting the best and showed it to me. It was a painting of a girl with light brown hair and skin with a tint of warm beige. Her eyes looked mysterious but curious, and they were a light brown. The girl looked to be about my age at the time, and she was standing on top of a giant mountain. The only other living thing in sight was a small but colorful butterfly that was resting in the palm of her hands. Oh. Make art out of this butterfly in my hands, me looking down at it. Oh. Okay. The girl looked shocked, mouth wide open, but she also looked happy. I asked Austin what he liked about the painting, and he smiled and replied, "The painting reminds me of you." He could have said that way more creepy. He could have been like, "The painting reminds me of you." But I'm guessing because of the context of this story, he just said, "The painting reminds me of you." Or maybe he said, "No, the painting reminds me of you." I don't know how boys talk. Okay. I smiled with glee and said, "Thanks!" Slightly sarcastically, but happily. The rest of the museum was a blast, and I enjoyed spending time with Austin. Officially, 3 of 4 given hours were gone, and it was officially 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I couldn't believe that we were only at our first stop and had spent 5 hours on this round-of-the-world trip. 4 hours plus an extra hour of travel from takeoff. Just in case you were wondering where that 5th hour came from. Well, not the 5th. Yes, the 5th, the 1 hour. Also, to think it takes only 2 hours to get to each stop is quite amazing. For the last hour in Spain, Austin and I decided to part ways. I had $51 left, and the driver said that whatever money we didn't spend, we got to keep. Yee! Of course, we would get another $500 to spend at our next destination. So I decided to keep my money and take a walk in the park. Beautiful trees and birds all around. Oh, and look, there's Cleo. Wait, what? What? Out of all the people I was traveling with, the least likely I expected to be at the park was Cleo. The girl all about music and coolness. Why would she be here? The park. What? Apparently, even through my silence, the girl could sense my presence and looked my way. She hesitated before doing anything, but finally waved. Was it this wave? Was it this wave? A creepy wave. Or was it a wave like, go away? No, it was a happy wave. Well, maybe that's an invitation for friendship. Actually, it kind of asked that like a question. Well, maybe that's an invitation for friendship? As I slowly but cheerfully went up to her, I immediately apologized for bumping into her back at the NASA headquarters bathroom. Cleo shook her head and replied that she sometimes has anger issues and she also wanted to apologize to me. Full apologies. I love it when people apologize. I don't know, that sounds weird. Okay. She described it this way. "I guess my powers sometimes get the best of me. I didn't want to flood the bathroom. I just hope you didn't think I had explosive diarrhea." Because if it was anyone else, Fat Boy, I think we would have thought so. We both laughed at that. We began to walk together, and I soon found out that she enjoys clearing her mind in nature. And so right after the restaurant incident, she immediately located this here park. On the flip side, I also learned that Cantwell had secretly followed the poor girl here because he was so very eager to talk about all the great things in life he had managed to accomplish simply by reading his books. After only 20 seconds of Cantwell's non-stop talking, Cleo decided that she had had enough of it and tried to remove this burden by interrupting Cantwell to tell him that there was a nearby bookstore filled with books the boy had never read before. Cantwell, however, said that this was impossible, since he had read every single book alive on this planet twice. Leo, however, convinced him by saying that she actually wrote these new unread books and that their auction would be today at that very bookstore. Catwell had suddenly become very pale at hearing this. These books I haven't read yet, oh. And all Catwell had to do, according to Cleo's directions, was turn left once and then right 17 times, and he would make it there. We both giggled our stomachs off at how the boy was so convinced at that. I figured out after more talking that me and Cleo actually had a lot in common. Unfortunately, Cleo suddenly gasped when she saw the time. 2:57 p.m. What? The rocket is 2 miles away, and with only 3 minutes remaining. What? 1, 2, 3. 2 miles away. Imagine that. That would be like a marathon sprint. Actually, that's not even right because that would only be 1 mile, even 2. Okay. How will we make it there in time? Cleo? Cleo had different emotions about this though. Her amber eyes remained totally calm and her face wide with a bright smile. She simply said, "We ride the waves." Then out of nowhere, a colossal amount of water arrived and scooped us up both. Although it never touched the ground, the water slickly slid across the tops of trees and homes. Eventually, the tallest building in Spain. Yeah, because water can do that. Ooh. We arrived at the rocket in no time and with only a minute left to spare. We did it in 2 minutes. Wow. As we boarded, we saw that the seating arrangement had changed. My name tag was directly across from Austin's in the second row, except that this time I would be sitting on the right-hand side. Cleo was in the front right, in front of me. That boy was now directly behind me, and Catwell was across from him. Yeah. Did I mention that the driver always got the front left seat? It's pretty assumable. Anyway, once everyone sat down, Catwell announced that he was disappointed to find out that there was no book auction at the nearby bookstore. Oh no, poor Catwell. Just when Cleo slowly became more and more red in the face, Catwell also announced that he found 3 of her newest books and spent $15 on each one. How did he do that? He even showed the books to all of us. The publishing dates were apparently just a week ago, and the author's name was Cleo. I looked at my friend, confused. Cleo shook her head and mouthed at me, "I have no idea." After a few minutes of Catwell's continuous talk about what was so interesting about each and every one of Cleo's newest books, the rocket driver told him to quiet down, or else. The driver then asked each of us to share what we did at our first destination. Then he finally turned the ignition key and we blasted off high into the sky. Oh. So Cleo began, and she explained that she first accompanied the rest of us at the restaurant, then walked 4 miles in the park, even climbing a tree so high up that she could see the rocket from 2 miles away. Ooh. So toward the end of our trip, she ran into me and we started chatting, kind of like I remember. Although she decided to leave out the part about Catwell blabbing beside her for the first mile of her walk, like she told me. Next, the driver asked Austin to explain what he did. Austin skipped the first part of the restaurant since we were all there, and no one wanted to tell the pilot what atrocities Fat Boy had caused. Then he visited a museum with me, and then went to a festival and bought me a yellow sun-shaped balloon. Oh, who has a crush? He handed it to me. I loved how colorful the balloon was with all of its flowers. He knows me so well. I thanked him so much and gave him a hug. Now it was my turn to share. Ooh. I explained everything very briefly since Cleo and Austin had already explained most of it. Then Catwell went into full detail about every little thing that he did and what happened every minute of every second, which took him roughly 15 minutes. A lot of our ride time. Yeah. Most of what he said was boring, although the end did catch my attention. He said that after he got his books, he saw Fat Boy yelling at a hot dog stand worker. As Catwell had neared closer, he heard Fat Boy complain about how the guy was. He said that after he got his book, he saw Fatwell yelling at a hot dog stand worker. Catwell had neared closer. He heard Fat Boy complain about how the guy was mixing hot dogs with rice. We continue. Fat Boy apparently thought this combo was preposterous, and so instead of asking for a normal hot dog and walking away, Fat Boy gathered up all of his might, flipped over the hot dog stand, belly bumped the hot dog guy to the ground, and screamed, "Yes, the doggies are free from burden of gray stuff!" The crazy boy then shoved 5 hot dogs free from rice into his mouth, and happened to part from the seat, leaving the poor hot dog stand manager knocked out. Catwell explained how he himself had walked on over, helped the old guy up, put his stand back in proper place, handed the man a copy of his own favorite book, and left. After Catwell was done, Fat Boy didn't waste a second. He stood in his chair but fell off, which annoyed the driver. Got back up and said, I did it for the right reason. Those doggies were in pain. In fact, agony. If I didn't avenge them, who would? Cleo specifically told him that those hot dogs were not even alive. So why should anyone be concerned about what they were mixed with? Fat Boy replied by saying, you not believing in the power of hot dogs crushes my soul. The driver then broke the awkward silence by announcing that in 20 minutes we would be arriving in China. Great! Then we all started chatting together about our personal lives. I learned how Austin wanted to be a race car driver when he was older, and Catwell an author. Suddenly, out of nowhere, Catwell asked the driver what his name was. Immediately, the driver got all red in the face and stated that there was no reason for any of us to know. Strange, I thought, but I didn't think much more about it. As we landed in China, we decided to split our new $500 firstly and then go our separate ways. Yay! With my $100, I asked Cleo if she wanted to accompany me to a nearby thrift store. She agreed. Once inside, we spotted many cool things. Antique cups, pots, plates. But the one thing that interested me the most was a unique pot that had ancient spherical artifacts that were supposed to contain magic powers. At least the box's label stated so. Suddenly, a dude came up to us. A dude. Stating that he was the owner of the shop and asked if we knew what the things we were holding were. I stated, the label says they give off magic powers, so they must be magic, right? He said that I was indeed, correct. I looked at the magic balls. They looked shiny and were in the shape of an orb. Then the man asked us if we wanted to test one out. I said a very eager, yes! Cleo, however, refused. When I asked her why she didn't want to, she stated that she already had one. She showed me a very beautiful and shiny ring. Blue and contained a symbol that looked like the waves of the ocean. The man gasped and mentioned that the ring Cleo was wearing was one of great value and power. He also said to Cleo that he would love to buy it from her in exchange for $10,000. Ooh, the night. Cleo automatically refused and started yanking me toward the door. But it was too late. The man had somehow already stolen the ring from Cleo's finger. Not that hand. Let me just say the middle finger, yeah. Not the ring finger, she's not married. I don't know, the middle finger. And was running away with it. Ooh. After him! Cleo yelled. Before I left, I grabbed 5 orbs out of the 7 that were there and ran behind Cleo directly after the thief. Oh! As I ran, I concluded that since these orbs were magic, I could probably use one to defeat the guy. He was already attempting to use the water magic that the ring gave him to drown Cleo in the water of nearby fountains. Ooh. Nearby fountains, lakes, and water bottles. The water inside the water bottle. Yeah. But Cleo wouldn't quit. I glanced down at the magical orbs within each of my hands. I read on the front of the orbs, animal call, wind, ice, flight, and super strength. I found the wind one to be quite useful and tossed it over to Cleo. In order to activate it, I heard my friend say, "Open sesame," while rubbing the top of the orb. Ooh. She then hurled a large thrust of wind toward the thief. Whoosh! I decided to try one too. Thinking that flight would be best, I said the magic words, and on my next step, I began flying high in the air. Not with wings, just, Superman. Whoosh! Oh. Cleo was using the wind to blow away all the water thrown at her by the man, and luckily she was gaining on him. I decided that we needed more help. So while in the air, I spotted Austin hiking deep in the Yellow Mountains, a place I learned about in school, and flew on over toward him. I had 3 more powerful orbs, so I gave Austin the one that had ice powers. I told him what had happened and why we needed to help Cleo. He quickly understood and said the magic words. The boy then used his magical powers to make a slippery pathway across the ground fast enough to catch up to the criminal case. Then I flew back up high in the sky and searched for the rest of my traveling companions. I spotted Catwell heading out of a bookstore, each hand balancing a stack of over 20 books. I flew down to inform her about the problem. With no second thought, I decided to give him the orb of animal call. He, strangely, called a kitten. After hugging the feline for about 10 seconds, Catwell called a bear, a moose, and some mosquitoes. I really had no clue what his plan was, but I didn't want to waste any time figuring it out. I flew back up high in the sky in order to locate the last person. Fat Boy. After lots of flying and constant searching, I finally spotted my target near an ice cream stand. of course, eating a huge chocolate ice cream cone dripping in chocolate syrup and coated in chocolate sprinkles. Ooh. I flew down beside Fat Boy and told him what happened, but made sure to stay a good 5 feet away because the dude had an enormous ice cream cone in his hands, which he might attempt to use as a weapon. I immediately tossed over the orb and told him what to say. Open sesame! He suddenly dropped to the ground. Oh. His ice cream went splat too. Suddenly the boy's arms and legs grew large and so did his legs. Then Fat Boy's torso expanded until his width balanced his height of 20 feet tall. I hovered up to Fat Boy's new height and showed him the way. Ooh. After about a half a mile into me flying and him running, I noticed Fat Boy stop and pick up a truck parked on the side of the road. Then he threw it so hard that I honestly had no idea where it went. What was that for? I screamed at him. He just shrugged and continued walking forward. Okay. When we finally arrived at the scene, I surprisingly saw how the thief who had stolen Cleo's ring was smashed by a flying truck. Wait, but not just any truck, but the truck that Fat Boy had thrown. I guess that dude could be useful after all. The thief hesitantly returned the stolen ring, and we returned him back his orbs. Why on earth? I don't know. He's a criminal. He should not have those orbs. Yeah, magical orbs. Great. Of course, Cat Will then blabbed and blabbed about how epic the entire event was. He described how Austin had made the guy slip on ice, then using his own powers, Cat Will dropped a whole bunch of animals surrounding the guy. How come that big truck rider swam over and managed to smash the thief directly? We may never know. Maybe the super strength of your Fat Boy had also given him super eye orientation. Or maybe to celebrate though. When was we fair? How many nearby? They have put a mask there. There was some scary fast rides though. Cleo had the nerves to ride. Catwell basically enjoyed the wondrous carousel. We immediately rushed to play a bingo game with hopes of winning a free pizza, a unicorn plushie, and a cool slinky. Austin enjoyed the skill-based games, dart throwing, ring toss, basketball, and other cool carnival games. As for me specifically, I decided to skip from the group and headed to the water park to ride some well-preserved, fast, thrilling water slides. Of course, I didn't bring a bathing suit with me, but luckily there was some being sold in a nearby gift shop. A colorful one-piece suit had caught my eye, and I decided to buy it. Then I rode several water slides. One was funnel-shaped, another would drop below your feet, and one was angled so vertically it was almost a 180-degree drop. After a lot of water fun, I decided to dry off, change back into my normal clothes, and find the other. By now, the time was 12:30 p.m. We were supposed to be back by the rocket by 6. Once I found my group, they excitedly told me that there would be some fireworks happening nearby in less than 5 minutes. We decided we would stay for a total of 15 minutes, leaving enough time to order takeout and bring back to the plane. Thus, we set up a place slightly far away from the fireworks so that they wouldn't be so loud, but we could still see them. After about 2 minutes of the colorful explosions, I asked Cleo how she had received her magical ring. She said that it was passed down in her family for many generations. However, each new possessor in her bloodline received a new power from it, and the image on the ring would change with the new holder's power. Once the old holder of the ring had died, her mother's power had been to control light, that is, before she died. After a bit, we got up and headed on over to a Chinese restaurant to get some food. I ordered some steamed vegetables, garlic, tofu, and veggie dumplings, because why not? I'm probably not going to spend time explaining what everyone else got, especially Fat Boy, who ordered so much in one takeout box. It's hard to say how many separate items he requested. At least the Chinese restaurant wasn't too expensive, so each of us got to keep some leftover money. We then headed back to the rocket and devoured. We spoke to each other for a while until the driver told us that we would be arriving in Australia within 3 hours. He added that since we would be arriving so late, we would all sleep in the rocket and then in the morning venture out and explore Australia. For now, we would just hang tight in the rocket until we got there. 10 minutes later, Fat Boy started complaining that he wanted some french fries. We all yelled at him to just wait until we arrived in Australia. For now, just sit tight in the rocket. He settled down for a few minutes. But less than 2 minutes later, Fat Boy continued his complaints about wanting french fries. He got angry and started running up and down the rocket's center aisle. Suddenly, he stopped where the pilot was seated, grabbed the man's shoulders, shook him, and screamed, "Go faster!" The driver assured the boy that if he were to go any faster, the engines might explode, and he didn't want the risk of blowing up the entire rocket in midair. Hi, I'm down here. Fat Boy didn't listen though. He got red in the face and used all his weight to shove the driver to the ground. Then the boy shimmied his way into the seat and pushed the gas full blast ahead. As Fat Boy did this, everyone in the rocket's backseat shouted, "No!" Since the rocket was set in full blast, everyone was pushed up against their seats super hard until bam! Just bam. The rocket stopped suddenly in midair and we all began feeling the tip of the rocket tip downward. The engines had just exploded. Exploded. I heard a voice speaking across from me. It was Austin. I looked at him and said, yeah? What in the world did he want to tell me at a time like this? Slowly, he leaned over and handed me a bracelet. He said he won at the fair. He had won it for me. I leaned over and hugged him, oh how nice, and said that I loved it. But I told him that he didn't have to get me anything because I liked him just the way he was. I tried to give him back the bracelet, but he insisted that I try it on, so I did. At that exact moment, I felt a surge of energy flash through me, my hair stuck out of all ends. Cleo suddenly stopped during a mid-makeup session, looked at me and said, "You have electricity powers!" I was kind of confused. How, though? Austin, however, said it might have something to do with that bracelet. Where you get it, we don't know. It didn't matter much now. However, we had to save that rocket and ourselves. I decided I had an idea. I told Cleo to use her water powers and to keep the plane aloft in the sky for a while longer while I tried to fix the engines with electricity power. And yawned. She lifted her hands and said a swirl of water from the ocean below. This little tip of our falling and failing aircraft. The airplanes here, the water like swirling below the tip. This might have to harder than it seemed. When I was eventually able to pry open the front panel containing the engine, I realized that they were on fire. It also didn't help that Fat Boy kept on screaming right behind me. I screamed so hard I needed to be quiet, and they kept saying, "Well, stop blabbering about such random stuff," which the two boys immediately did. Yeah. Then I checked on Cleo, who was struggling to keep his heavy rocket tumbling down. I gave her my best words of confidence. Although I'm not sure if I had any effect on the actual struggle. Meanwhile, Austin was attempting to awaken an unconscious pilot. With a bamboozled mind, I thought for a moment, then suddenly felt a surge of nearby electricity. I glanced out the window and saw an island was coming into view. Ooh, one which must have been part of Indonesia. How I knew that, I do not know. I don't know. Did Indonesia? Okay. I felt a surge of electricity coming from the civilization there and decided to make an effort to fix the engines using the power. Suddenly, I heard a crack of metal from behind me. When I spun around, I saw Austin holding out the pilot's arm. An arm which had colorful red, green, and blue cables coming out from it. Austin then spoke. "I don't think our driver is or was human." That explained a lot, especially since the driver never left the rocket to eat or, I don't know, see the sun. The guy didn't even have a name. He was and is a rocket.
Okay, I'm gonna have to hold up there. Did I just say he's a rocket?
A rock?
I meant to say a robot, but what in the world? I don't know.
I said slowly, attempting to comprehend the situation. Cleo screamed at me to hurry. She had been struggling before, and she was most certainly struggling now. I quickly got back to what I was doing. After a bit of hand movement and electrical currents, I managed to fix one of the 3 engines in no time. The other 2 were slightly more challenging, however, yeah. As soon as I managed to fix the second engine, I suddenly realized just how close we all were to crashing into the ocean beneath us. I told Austin to break open a door and Cleo to bring a wave so everyone could hop on and then get off the rocket. Then I wanted her to set them down on some nearby piece of land. Meanwhile, I attempted to fix the last engine and land the plane. Yep, me, not a pilot, but landing the plane. Yeah. Cleo asked, "Are you sure you will be okay?" I replied that if I ever fell in danger, I would jump directly off the plane and into the water. Because that will save me, totally. Yeah. She did as I commanded her to, taking everyone safely off the plane. Seconds following, I finally fixed the last remaining engine when suddenly water came up on all sides. I was underwater! Just when I thought I might have to crack open a window to escape, I saw the water around the rocket shut off. The rocket was up again. Whee! Cleo! It was Cleo. She had parted the water around the rocket so it wouldn't get wet. She's become the next Moses. Ooh, part the sea. She was attempting to save me and I would not let her down. I quickly pulled a plane up in reverse and flew out of that watery hole. Now to figure out where I would land. I noticed a spot on the beach that Cleo had set everyone upon. A spot which barely held any large objects. Slow and steady at the driver's wheel, I tilted one way, then another. And then thump. It was exactly the noise I wanted to hear because it meant I had landed, yeah. Or it meant that something went thump. I leapt out of the rocket in time to hear Fat Boy saying to the others that he would love to provide the food at my funeral. I might eat all of it though, Fat Boy added. No need for a funeral, I said, stepping out of the rocket unharmed. Austin came running on over to me and gave me a big hug. I'll hug myself, yay. Big hug. The fact that my arms can do this is kind of creepy. I don't know. Maybe I have double jointed shoulders or something. I mean, I can do this too. I can do the hand reach. So, but yeah, I can do this. Entire arm cross. Okay. We're almost there. We're almost there. Ooh. No need for a funeral, I said, stepping out of the rocket unharmed. Austin came running on over to me and gave me a big hug. Cantwell simply stated, "You didn't die? But that's not mathematically possible. If the rocket was tilted at a 30-degree slope, then the percent of air current was far too extreme for blah." And we'll stop at whatever he was blabbing on about there. Cleo then asked, "What are we gonna do now?" I thought about it and decided that it would be best to leave the rocket and the bracelet together for someone else to find. Is that best? I don't know. Someone else will have electricity powers and a beautiful rocket that they can do something with. I don't know if that's good. Okay. After all, I don't need magic powers to be a hero or awesome. Then I said, Cleo. Then I continued. Cleo, how would you feel about a ride back home on the waves? She smiled and said, "Actually, I do find it quite hot at the moment. A splash would be nice." She then lifted her hands up, and a huge wave came up from behind her. Pow! Once we all got on, the wave lifted us up and off we went. Whee! We have no say in where we're going. I mean, imagine that someone says like, "Yeah, you're riding a wave, but where are you going? You have no control over that wave. It's not like you're driving a car." Okay, yep, that's my story. NASA dream adventure. Yeah, I think like I said in the dream, I was like 14-ish years old, but I dreamt at my same age, yes. And it was very interesting. I think I was just so excited. I had a dream about NASA at that time, and I was like, I need to write this down. And I started writing it down, and then I just like got more and more and more and more, and I started developing more and more. And then I started fixing the grammar. But I wrote down a tiny little book. I had a dream journal at the time, and it filled up about like maybe 20 pages. The pages weren't that they were like that big, but still it's a lot. 20. Yeah, but I typed it all out. I'm gonna put it on my website in case you want to read it for yourself. Or maybe just listening to it was okay. To me, I love listening to things better than reading it because words speak louder when they are louder.
And articulated by a good vocal speaker.
So, if you enjoyed this video, yeah, I spoke a lot. It was a very long journey we both took. It's just a magical power you can receive to go into the clouds, which is why I say, see you in the clouds. And Kaomi out. Bye-bye. 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 Bye. Bye.
Katang